Hi, my name's Phil, and this is LabourVision, where we look at Labour policies as they currently stand. I'm going to be discussing this one, NHS staffing. There are, as you'd expect from Labour, a lot of NHS policies, and it will take far too long to cover all of them in one video. Our healthcare systems are completely broken after 13 years of the Tories, and I will be going over all aspects between now and the election. But for now, let us look at the most important resource the NHS has and is badly in need of: staff. Now, on my own channel recently, I think it was yesterday, I did a video on just what a desperate state our shortage of NHS nurses was in. I'll post a link in the description below if you're interested. But needless to say, we have shortages across the NHS. We have over 110,000 vacancies going unfilled altogether. We recently made it harder to recruit medics from Europe. And the government are choking off our domestic supply as the numbers in training has been falling badly behind in the last few years, especially. One of the easiest ways to get a grip on the situation, which the Tories have been resisting, is, and there's been calls for this, produce projections of NHS staffing. The idea is that the Health Secretary presents a report to Parliament each year which sets out the current staffing situation and how it is projected to look in the short, medium and long term, considering various things like, new training, new recruitments, retirements, just leaving for other reasons. So if all that stays as it is, what is the long-term projection for NHS staffing? And also, of course, you have to include projections for population increase. But the Tories have refused to do this. And this is because if they did, it would reveal that, as bad as the shortages are now, they would be catastrophic over the next generation, with numbers of NHS staff going down and the population, of course, growing. But Labour have a policy of doing just this. In fact, they're actually going further, because they are suggesting that these projections will not be produced by the Department for Health and Social Care. They will present them to Parliament, but they will be produced independently. A sort of Office for Budgetary Responsibility unit, but for NHS staffing. This would put pressure on the government, including, of course, the Labour government, because they'll be implementing it, to make sure that there is a credible plan to get staffing levels back up to where they're needed. Because no Labour Health Secretary wants to present to Parliament a plan that shows, oh yeah, in 20 years we're buggered. So it'll be impossible to fudge the issue, because the mainstream media would be all over it if the projections did not tally with what the Labour Health Secretary is claiming. And for those who think Labour, you sometimes get the claim, well, Labour are just planning on tinkering, really, there's nothing very big in there. I would pose a question. Why on earth would a party intended on just slapping slightly better sticking plasters on things introduce a policy of having their plans independently analysed and presented publicly? Now, Labour are applying a harsh spotlight to themselves with this policy, one that the Conservatives have refused to. But it's all very well talking about the spotlight. How are Labour going to produce a plan which stands up to this independent scrutiny? They have policies of doubling the number of medical school places, training an additional 10,000 nurses and midwives a year. In reality, that might increase, because I think when they came up with that number, the number in training was higher than it's been falling back badly in the last couple of years. So that may actually increase. Training 5,000 new health visitors a year, doubling the number of district nurses qualifying each year. That's also part of their plans. So very much about increasing across the board the number in training and the number qualifying. And all of this is about basically increasing the number of people in this country training for these jobs. But there are two problems which Labour need to solve. It's not as simple as going, oh, just increase training places. The first is that training medics doesn't actually fix NHS staffing problems if once they've qualified, they work in the private sector or in another country. Secondly, there are some medical professional places going unfilled right now. So increasing those places doesn't help, because we've already got more than we can fill, unless Labour can attract more people into the profession. So what is the solution? Doesn't take a genius to work it out, does it? The pay offer is going to have to be improved, and quickly. Although Labour are not committing to redressing the way public sector pay has fallen badly behind since the Tories took over, you have to think strategically. Not committing to something is not the same as ruling it out. How do Labour persuade more people to train? How would you be persuaded to train? Because places are not the main limiting factor for some of these jobs right now, including for nurses. There are more nursing places available than we're filling. So increasing the number of places doesn't help unless you can persuade more people to fill them. How do you persuade those who do train to work in the NHS? Pay has to improve. Otherwise, these training places are meaningless. So we can expect pay to increase beyond the level that Labour are currently committing to, just like I will remind people in 97. In 97, they were a bit, oh, we can't promise to do this. And then they did anyway. It's obvious enough. Their entire plan depends on it. After all, a Labour government that cannot even fix the NHS is certainly not going to win the following election, because that is the least voters expect of them. Which raises another interesting question. So, with improved pay, Labour can, of course, persuade more budding medics into training. That is great. And long term, that will help. That will get those projections looking a lot better. But they won't be available until the following Parliament. Politics is very short term, right? It's great when politicians put a long term plan in place, but it's winning the next election is all about short termism. Labour are not going to want to fight the following election on a platform of the good times are just around the corner, right? We've put all this stuff in place, but you need to vote for us again if you want to see it. Because the Tories have been doing that for like a decade and voters never saw those good times. It could just be argued they're a little bit cynical now, right? So Labour have to deliver. So how to do that within the first term? Immigration will have to be part of the answer, but their policies focus on building up UK staff. So what else can they do in that direction? Well, another current policy is to work with existing staff and trade unions to look at training pathways and look at new routes into the NHS. In other words, ways of getting some staff trained and into the NHS really quickly. Now, obviously, you can't just train a doctor more quickly than we do. This isn't like Rishi Sunak's brain fart about getting therapists to do your dental work. The way I would envisage this working is a redistribution of labour. So if, for example, you identify some tasks that highly trained medics like doctors and nurses are performing, but you say, well, these tasks, you could actually train someone to do those in a year, right? So you could get another like type of medic to do those with much quicker training. That may be how that works. It also means that then your smaller number of nurses, because they won't have as many tasks, easier to manage the workload, and you create a new type of medic, NHS professional with much shorter training times to do some of the tasks that can be trained much more quickly. But however they do it, Labour will certainly have to boost NHS staffing numbers during their first term. You know, we're not going to see the benefit of the extra training places, even if they work immediately, until the second and probably third term in office. But they have to win that second and third term in office, don't they? So hopefully that lays out Labour's policies on NHS staffing. Won't be easy, but I think way more likely to work than the Tories' plan of more real terms pay cuts for NHS professionals and sticking their head in the sand about the transition from regular Tory NHS winter crises to basically all year round crises. If you found the video useful, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe to the channel for more of these videos every Sunday. And if you'd like me to cover Labour policies on a particular issue sooner rather than later, put it in the comments below with any specific questions you may have. Thanks for listening, and until next time, I'll see you later.